Hi there, and welcome to the instructional video for the print unclog pattern. We've all run into this situation from time to time where we print a photographic print and we notice banding or stripes in the print, and we know it's time to do a nozzle check and possibly a head cleaning to get our nozzles unclogged. The typical way to do that is by going into the driver, going to the maintenance tab, running a nozzle check, and once that's printed, we look for breaks in the lines for the various colors. If there are any breaks, you could do a head cleaning or an auto nozzle check in cleaning, but both of those cleaning cycles simply run the full cleaning cycle on all colors, and they use ink from each color even if you only have colors in one or two places that are clogged. Say for example you only have a clog in your magenta. A cleaning cycle, even the auto nozzle check and cleaning, if you have an Epson printer that has that feature, they all run a full cleaning cycle and they don't stop until a full pattern is seen. There are no clogs. Well, that uses a lot of ink. So to avoid that, there's a new feature in QImage Ultimate called the Print Unclog pattern. Printing an unclog pattern simply creates a print that will pulse each color and the nozzles for those colors across the page at different rates and different intensities. This dialog here gives you some simple instructions on how to use the dialog and try to unclog any of those minor clogs you might have by trying this unclog pattern before resorting to ink wasting cleaning cycles. The check boxes that you see here are made to allow you to target specific colors. So if you have some breaks in the yellow and magenta in your nozzle check and all the other colors look fine, you could only check those two, and only those two colors, only those nozzles will be pulsed. But let me start out by showing you the full pattern. Before doing that, if we read this dialog, the instructions tell us that we need to set up our printer first. The reason we need to set up the printer is because the pulse pattern is designed for the printable area of the paper that you're using and the printer that you're using. And that will be unique to the printer model and the size paper you've chosen. So this is allowing you to design the pulse pattern that's going to be printed so that it's optimized for your printer and paper. I'm going to go into setup here and I'll keep the R1900 selected. The instructions tell us to select plain paper, use the highest quality available for that paper, and to turn color management off. On most Epson printers, color management is found on the Advanced tab by clicking on ICM and then clicking the off box for color management or for color adjustment. So now I've made all the selections that I'm supposed to make. I've turned color management off. I've got plain paper at high quality at 8.5 by 11 size. A4 is fine, something in that range. I'll click OK here, and it's asking me if I'd like to save that as an unclog setup. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and I'll just call it plain. It automatically puts the name of your printer here, but I just added a dash plain onto the end so I'll know what that setup represents. Once I click OK, you'll notice that I now have a saved setup here. So what I just did, including the check boxes here that are checked, and the setup that I just made, has been stored here. It's just a convenience so that you can come back and select that the next time you need to deal with clogs on that particular printer. At this point, I'm ready to print the full pattern. If I click print, it'll print immediately, or I'm just going to queue it up here so that I can show you what that will look like on a page. As you can see, the entire page is covered and it's optimized with the pulsing at the proper rates for that page size. And I have each of the colors being pulsed at different rates across the page. And what that does is turns the nozzles on and off for each ink color as it goes across the page. And by doing that, we can free up clogs a lot of the time without using a lot of ink by those cleaning cycles in the driver. I wanted to show you this full pattern here because one use for this full pattern might be if you use your printer rarely, if it's only used say once every couple weeks, or it's only used for black text a lot of the time, I could print this full pattern, let's say once a week, just to keep the nozzles clear, to keep some ink going through them so that the ink doesn't dry up. So that's one thing that you can use the full pattern for. Now I do want to show you that we can actually optimize this pattern for this printer. So I know that the R1900 doesn't have blue or green inks, so I'm going to uncheck those. And then let's cue up the pattern and see what that looks like. It's basically the same pattern, but it's now missing blue and green. The printer doesn't have blue and green inks, so I uncheck those simply because there's no need to try to pulse blue and green ink when the printer doesn't have that color. All it's going to do is compose that color from these colors that do exist. So to keep things efficient and optimized, I uncheck the colors that my printer doesn't have. To further optimize how this print unclog pattern can work for you, the first step is always to print the nozzle check and give that a look and see if there are any missing chunks in any of the colors. Well, let's say I only had missing chunks in the magenta and the red. So I'm going to uncheck all and just click magenta and red. And now if I click print, remember that I've already saved this setup using these instructions up here. So it shows me that I'm already set up for plain paper. So I know I'm ready to go. I just want to check the magenta and red because those are the only nozzles that need to be cleared. Now if I print that, or I'll just cue it up again here just so you can see it, it's only going to pulse the red and the magenta nozzles across the page. And that will optimize the chance that you can clear those nozzles just by selecting only the ones that need to be cleared. Another example, what if we had breaks only in our black ink? In a similar fashion, we uncheck all and just check the black ink. But while we're here, I want to address the MK-PK ink being matte black and photo black. On a lot of printers that have a matte black and photo black ink, they won't use both of those at the same time. So if I see breaks in the photo black lines on my nozzle check pattern, I've selected plain paper here in this setup that got saved automatically when I clicked setup. And I know that on plain paper it's only going to put down matte black ink. So if I want to clear photo black, I'm going to go back into the driver, into the properties, and I'm going to select, instead of plain paper, photo paper glossy. Select a glossy paper type. And that will produce photo black ink when it sees black on the page. But because I've changed the paper type, this is very important, you need to go back into the Advanced tab and look what it's done to me. It took away my color management off. When you select a different paper type, it resets the color management back to defaults. So whenever you select the paper type, you've got to go back to the Advanced tab or the color group. I'll show you the other Canon and HP printers in just a minute where you turn color management off in those. But you always have to recheck and make sure to turn off color management when you change that paper type. Now I've got color management off, glossy paper. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now again it asks me, it noticed that I did a new printer setup and it's saying, you want to name this one? I'll say yes. I'm going to name this one glossy. Click OK. And now you can see in here I've got two setups. I've got a plain paper and a glossy setup. Now when I reload these, if I reload the plain paper, it's going to reload the check boxes that were used the last time I used plain paper and all the driver settings. So by selecting plain paper, I've got plain paper here, it remembered the color management off, and so on. When I select glossy, it brings back the check box or boxes that were checked when I made that glossy setup, and it'll also bring back the driver settings. Now you see glossy paper. Color management is off. So you see how these saves work here and how you can use them. Now when I cue up or print this black gray pattern on glossy paper, You can see that it's going to fire the black nozzles at different rates across the page to turn them on and off and get that ink flowing. But now by selecting glossy paper in the driver, it's going to use the photo black ink and clear that color. So you don't have to put glossy paper in the printer, you just have to select it in the driver, because we don't care what the actual print looks like. You can use a cheap piece of copy paper for that as well. Now it's worth mentioning that not all drivers are the same with respect to MK and PK inks. If your printer requires a physical change, a change out of the cartridge, a special selection in the driver to switch between MK and PK ink, you know your printer and you know how to switch those back and forth. If not, you'd have to refer to the manual or the help that's inside the driver to be able to do that. I'm just showing you here for the purpose of this video on this particular printer how to do that. A final note on the black and gray inks. You'll notice in this dialog it says black and gray ink, and it says it'll target black, gray, and light gray. Well, that's the same as black, light black, and light black on some other printers. Whatever they call it, if you have more than one gray, the printer that you're using will be covered here, because you'll notice that the pattern pulses full black, mid gray, and quarter gray, and that will cover all the blacks that you might have on any printer model. So if you need to clear clogs in a light gray or a light black or a light black, just choose that black/gray checkbox and it'll be covered in the pattern. One final note about the color channels here. You'll notice that this cyan/PC, that means cyan and photocyan. This means magenta and photomagenta. So if your printer has photocyan and that's where you have your clogs, this is the box to check. If you have photomagenta, this is the box to check. Just magenta, this is the box. So all of these are designed so that if you select the general color that you're looking for to unclog, that it'll be covered in the pulsing print. Now some people have asked, don't you need a RIP to be able to isolate individual colors so that you can be sure that when you click only magenta, that only the magenta or photomagenta are being pulsed? The answer is that's not required, because we can target this color accurately enough so that most of the dots that are laid down on the page are going to be of the color you select. So if you have a red cartridge, for example, and you check red, every single dot that's laid down on the page may not be red. You may have a few black dots mixed in, or if you choose magenta, you might have some yellow or cyan mixed in, but they're so sparsely laid out that the vast majority of the ink will be coming from those magenta nozzles. And by virtue of the fact that the printer lays down a semi-random half-toning pattern, you can be sure that each nozzle on the print head will be fired as it goes across the page. It's not required that it fire 100% only from magenta to do the job. Finally, let's say that I'm targeting magenta because I have some breaks in the magenta on my nozzle check. I print this and let's say it doesn't work the first time. Let's say there's no improvement. Well, I would recommend printing it a second time, at least a second time, and then rechecking the nozzles. If you get no improvement again on the second try, you may need to resort to a cleaning cycle. This is not a complete replacement for a cleaning cycle. There may be stubborn clogs that will require a cleaning cycle from the driver. But if you're seeing improvement, if you have half of your magenta nozzles that are clogged and you print one page and now most of them are back but there are 3 or 4 that are still clogged, if you continue to see improvement, you're better off reprinting this same pattern again by clicking the print button here and just reprinting it and then rechecking the nozzle check. You're much better off doing that than to run a clean cycle, because the clean cycle is going to use all of the inks and it's going to use far more than multiple prints of this page. Even with the full pattern, it's not going to use as much ink because that's only equivalent to one photographic print. You may also ask, is this safe to run on my printer, to be pulsing these nozzles like this? Yes, it is safe. If you notice here, it's easy to see in this pattern because you can see that the nozzles are actually off as much as they're on. The way this is designed is to pulse the nozzles on and off across the page to get them freed of clogs. And the space in between here means that you're not continuously placing ink down on the entire page, and even if you were, printers are designed to handle stress tests like that because no manufacturer is going to make a printer where if you encounter a large area of one color, say a blue sky or a magenta sunset, that's not going to burn up your printer from printing a large area like this. So that, coupled with the fact that no nozzle is going to be pulsed continuously, means that it's safe for your printer. Note that if you have multiple printers and you've just unclogged your R1900 printer and you want to move on to your Canon Pro 9000, each time you want to change printers, go back to File and Print Unclog Pattern. Use the setup here, go into your other printer and set that up. We'll do that right now, and I'll show you how to turn off color management on a Canon printer. Plain paper is selected. I'm going to click Custom in the quality here. Select highest quality as the instructions on that dialog tell you to do. Under color and intensity, click Manual, Set, and on the matching tab here, click None, and that turns color management off. Now I've set up my Canon printer, and what you'll see is it allows me to save another unclogged setup for that Canon printer. I'm going to click OK, and now when I queue up the print for that Canon printer, you'll see that the print is designed specifically for the printable area, which is different on that Canon printer. If you just go up here and change your printer setup and print this pattern to an HP or some other printer, it won't be designed for that specific page size. It won't be optimal for that. So each time you want to do this, you need to go to the Print Unclog pattern, because this is the dialog here that's designing and formatting the pattern for the printer that you set up. As a final thing here, I'll show you how to set up the color management to turn that off on an HP printer. We've covered Epson and Canon now. I'll go down here to this Z3100, click on Properties for that. The paper type, I'll select plain paper, and it'll give me a warning here in a second. I'll tell it that it's okay, you can turn off gloss enhancer. I'm dealing with other colors right now. And here's a color tab here. Let's click on that. And under color management, when you click on application managed colors, that turns it off in the driver. So there's your method for turning off color management on an HP printer. Some printers have this feature in a different place, but generally you're looking for a color tab or a color group, and you're looking for off, none, or application managed colors. That's generally how you turn off color management in the driver. And again, turning off color management just accepts, I'm going to cancel this so it doesn't ask me to save. Turning color management off in the driver just accepts these RGB values that are being passed to the driver, and that will help to isolate the ink dots to the nozzles that are associated with the color that you check. So hopefully this video will help you maximize the chances that you can use this unclog pattern to clear any minor clogs before having to resort to cleaning cycles. With this dialog, the cleaning cycle should be a last resort. We've had pretty good success with this. A lot of people are reporting that this is doing the job for them and they didn't have to run a cleaning cycle. They noticed some breaks in their nozzle check pattern, and this did the job for them. But again, this is not a complete replacement for the cleaning cycles in the driver. The cleaning cycle is still there should you need it to clear any of those really stubborn clogs on a printer that's been sitting around for a long time and hadn't been printing, or you've taken a cartridge out and didn't replace it right away. That can cause clogs that may not be, you may not be able to clear those using this method. So thanks for watching the video and enjoy the new feature.